Hi everyone, to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're making spicy ground beef kebabs. I'm going to serve them with rice and tzatziki sauce and some pickled red onions. They're going to be delicious and full of flavor. Can something be delicious if it doesn't have flavor? Anyway, let's get started. All right, over here I have 2 pounds of ground beef. It's better to get beef that has some fat in it, maybe 15 to 20% fat is a good way to start. You can use a combination of beef and lamb if you want. You can even do this with ground chicken or poultry. Okay, but beef is my favorite way to go with this recipe. I have 2 small onions, or these might be medium. 2 onions. I'm going to just peel them and cut them into quarters, and I'm going to process them in the food processor. The food processor makes life so easy with this recipe. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time finely chopping things. Okay, and then I have a nice handful of cilantro. In some parts of the world, it's known as coriander, fresh coriander that is. I'm just gonna cut off the tough stems all the way in the back. And this has already been washed. I'm gonna keep it here in the strainer to strain a little bit more while I chop up the onions first. All right, so even though the food processor is pretty large, this is an 11-cup food processor, I'm gonna put 1 onion in at a time, so 4 quarters at a time, so that way they get chopped up evenly, or as even as possible. Don't take it too far. You don't want to end up with a puree. That is pretty good. They're finely chopped. There's still some bigger pieces in there. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not going to put them in the bowl with the meat just yet. I'm going to set them in a strainer that's sitting over a bowl to kind of catch any of the liquids that are released from the onions so I don't get a watered down beef mixture. So they're in here. Okay, next I have some serrano chilies. These are pretty spicy, so if you want them medium spicy, your kebabs that is, just throw 2 in here. And if this is still too spicy for you, you can use 1 jalapeno instead. If you like them very spicy like I like them, I'm gonna put 4 in there for 2 pounds of ground beef. Pulse until they're very finely chopped. Okay, throw the cilantro in there and get everything nice and finely chopped. If you're not a fan of cilantro, you can definitely substitute parsley instead. So now we're gonna get the onions in here. I'm just gonna press some of that liquid out of them. See how much came out? That's like 3 or 4 tablespoons. Now I'm gonna get a heaping teaspoon of ground cumin in here, a heaping teaspoon of ground coriander, and 2 teaspoons of salt. You can do 1.5 if you like less salt in your food, up to you. And then I have a tablespoon of finely ground garlic. That's like 4 garlic cloves. And I'm gonna get in there with my gloves, which you never see me wearing, but I'm gonna try and avoid touching the chopped up chilies so I don't end up burning my eyes later on when I forget that it's all over my hands. That stuff doesn't even really wash off. And then I'm gonna add about 3 to 4 tablespoons of olive oil and mix this together really well. And that's it, it's ready. So the kebab mixture is ready. At this point, you can cover the bowl with plastic wrap and refrigerate it either overnight or for an hour or 2 so the flavors can really come together and marry. If you don't have time, there's so much flavor in these that, you know, it's still gonna be delicious. You can just form the kebabs immediately after you make the mixture. I'm gonna clean up a little bit and then we're gonna move on to putting these all together and forming them. Okay, so before we get started on forming the kebabs, let's get the rice going so everything is ready at the same time. I have 2 cups of Basmati rice that I've rinsed a few times. You rinse them 4 or 5 times until the water runs clear, and then it's a good idea to let it soak for like 10 or 15 minutes in the cool water. And I have some scallions here, so I'm just gonna prepare these. Okay, so the green portions I'm gonna save for the end of the cooking process because they just cook so quickly. I'm just gonna finely slice them. You don't even need that many. I think I have too many. Maybe 4, 3 or 4 are enough. Slice them all the way down to the roots. And then I have a bowl of cold water that I'm going to rinse them in. You know what? I'm just going to do everything at the same time, make life easy. Carefully lift them out and put them in a strainer. If there's any dirt, it'll sink down to the bottom, and then you'll have the clean scallions in your strainer and get as much of the water off as you can. If the water is extra dirty, you're going to want to rinse these a few times. Okay, so I have a pot heating over medium heat. I'm going to add about 1/4 cup of olive oil to it, the scallions, and a little pinch of salt, and I'm going to cook them until they're nice and soft for about 3 minutes or so. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to add some chickpeas. These are chickpeas that were dried that I boiled a few days ago and I had in my refrigerator, but a can of chickpeas that are drained will work perfectly. You need about 1.5 cups or so. I mean, this is really as much as you want. You can put in here. If you don't like chickpeas, you can put some frozen green peas, or you could leave them out completely. A little bit of salt. Now you can put like 2 grated garlic cloves in here, but I have some garlic powder, granulated garlic powder. I'll put some in there like that, and some freshly cracked black pepper. Just really warm them through. Then go ahead and add the rice. Drain the water first. 2 cups of rice, so I'm adding 2 teaspoons of salt and 2 cups of water. You can do chicken broth instead if you prefer. And you could add some lemon juice, the juice of 1 whole lemon, about 1/4 cup or so. And that's it. We're just going to mix it up, bring it to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, I'm going to reduce the heat to a medium low. I'm going to put the lid on the pot and let it simmer for 15 minutes. Then once it's done simmering, I'm just going to fluff it all up and the rice will be ready. Okay, so now it's time to form the kebabs. Now you can make these round, like into little patties. You can also make them into like little meatballs, or the long kebab version, which is what I'm gonna make right now. You wanna take a little portion of the meat mixture, about 3 ounces or so, 3 to 4 ounces, and then you roll it into a ball first, and then you roll it into a kebab. Now, if the meat starts to stick to your gloves or to your hands, you could put some olive oil on your hands or on your gloves, and then continue to form these. The thing about these is it's better to not make these too long, because then they start to crack and break. And you can make a double batch or a triple batch because they freeze beautifully. You knew I was gonna say it, but anything that freezes well, I just like to put a little tiny bit more effort into it and make an extra batch, put it in the freezer for those really busy days, because they're ready in like 10 minutes. Once they thaw out, you can pan fry these, stick them in the air fryer, on the grill, and you'll have these on the table in less than 10 minutes, so why not? So this recipe makes between 18 to 20 kebabs, depending on the size that you're making. So I'm gonna continue forming these and putting them on my tray, and then we're gonna make them, we're gonna cook them. Okay, so my favorite way to cook these kebabs is pan fried with a little bit of oil in a cast iron skillet, but you can do these in the air fryer. You can cook these under the broiler in a baking sheet, or even grill them on a barbecue grill. But when you do them in a frying pan or in a cast iron skillet, which is what I prefer because it retains heat so beautifully, they stay a little more juicy and more flavorful, but it does make a little bit of a mess, so it's up to you. If you're cooking it in the air fryer, you want to preheat your air fryer to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Put as many kebabs fit into the air fryer and brush them with olive oil. And you're gonna cook them for about 4 or 5 minutes on each side. It all depends on your machine, how it works. They're not gonna get as golden in there though, so keep that in mind. So don't overcook them. You don't want them to be dry. And the cooking time also does depend on how thick you've made them. If you're pan frying them, you're going to want to put a layer of olive oil in a cast iron skillet or in a frying pan. And then once it's nice and hot, you're going to fry these about 3 or 4 minutes on each side, or until they're nice and golden. It takes a total of about 8 minutes. And then you're just gonna wanna put them on a serving platter. If you're pan frying them, put a paper towel or two underneath so it can absorb any excess oil. If you're air frying them, you don't have to worry about it. I like to serve them with some pickled onions, some tzatziki. In the tzatziki, whenever I'm making these spicy kebabs, I like to chop lots of fresh mint. I didn't record this, the tzatziki recipe, because I've done it so many times. I'll put the link down below where you can see a video, but the printed recipe will be on the blog, as well as the recipe for the pickled onions. They're so easy to make. They literally take like 5 minutes. You can't go wrong. Serve the kebabs with the rice pilaf that we made with the chickpeas and the spring onions, some tzatziki on the side, maybe a lemon wedge. It's time for the taste test, but before we go on to the taste test, let me show you the difference between the two kebabs. So the one that was cooked in the air fryer is a bit lighter, but it's still nice and juicy and perfectly cooked. And the one that's cooked in the frying pan is much more juicier, as you can see, and more golden. So let me know which way you're making it in the comment section down below. It is time for the taste test. And I want to get a little piece of onion, some of the rice, the tzatziki, and the kebab. So much flavor. That pickled onion goes great with this because you get the creaminess from the tzatziki, the spiciness in the kebab, but it's also very fresh tasting because there's lots of onion in there, and the cilantro is really nice and fresh tasting too. The rice is a little bit lemony and nice and light. It's a perfect combination. I hope you guys give this recipe a try. If you do, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Gracias.